I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie.
Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some of this commentaries surrounding the tragic shooting that happened the other day. We talked about it yesterday, but there's some new information that's coming out. Like when these situations come out, there's always new information that's evolving, and it's interesting. There's this, a couple segments with Scott Jennings on CNN talking about this, and people do want to point to the mental health, and the Democrats like, oh, we don't know about the ideology. We don't have to focus on that. We don't have to mental health is a cop out. It's the guns. We got to talk about the guns. And when they say they want to talk about the guns, they're talking about really, I think, confiscation, because if you want to talk about mass shootings and I know like AR-15 type of guns and stuff look scary to a lot of people, and in their minds I think they think the AR stands for automatic rifle. That's not what it stands for. But most mass shootings and gun crime in general are done with handguns, which are also semi-automatic. So if you're going to really go the route of we need to get them off the streets because it's just going to be safer, it's just, the next step is just going to lead to, you're going to get rid of that sort of common gun. Why wouldn't you advocate for the guns that are used the most for mass shootings, that you get rid of those? So it wasn't too long ago with DC versus Heller that they tried to get rid of our private right to own firearms. And, you had people like Hillary Clinton when she was running, entertaining things like Australia's mandatory buyback. So these people are yelling, do something, but just, you're not going to get rid of all the guns in the United States of America. If we do, we fundamentally really won't be the United States of America anymore. And we will just be in a direction where we've gone so far in surrendering our different liberties that we just fundamentally won't be the same people anymore. So I don't foresee that happening, but we can have conversations about mental health. But if we do have conversations about mental health, it's not going to go the way that they want it to go, because they are the side that celebrates mental health or mental illness, and affirm it instead of trying to treat it. And everybody has to go along with it. So we'll talk about that. Also, I want to talk about some interesting kind of conversations that I've been having with people, because people have tried to condemn Republicans for being anti-abortion but not protecting kids in this front. And I think it leads to some interesting places. When you don't value life, you just have a moral rot that just expands. A lot of people say if you don't get the life issue right, you don't get anything right. And I think when you get to pick and choose who's valuable based off of your worldview, and you get to play God, you get into other situations where, society just doesn't value life, period. So I have an example I want to show you guys. And we'll talk about some other things as well. But before we jump into everything, I would encourage you guys to go to blackteanews.com, check out the different content website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost a stream, run by side, all the good stuff you guys can't support. I very much do appreciate it, and appreciate you guys. You guys can also check out different merch that's available on the website, like the cool pumpkin spice mug. And I do have them in t-shirts. It's that time of year when you got your pumpkin spice. We got other mugs and stuff to also keep you, well, you could put something warm in it. I assume that's the thing, will keep you warm. We got different t-shirts and so on. So check that out. Check out my books. I was doing some formatting stuff today. I figured I had my issue that I had uploaded something wrong to Ingham Sparks as far as my metadata. They did fix that, but I'm just tinkering with the actual pages because some things weren't right with like the sizing and the bleeds and so on. So it's like cut off at the center where the gutters are. So now I gotta like reformat that. So I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I haven't done eGrub Sparks before. I sound a bit congested, probably to you guys. I don't know. I think it's I hopefully it's just allergies and not me like coming up with another cold because I just had one and I usually get like 2 bad ones a year and I'm just not ready for another one. But I think it's just like congestion and due to like allergies and stuff because I kind of have a headache and um I was feeling I don't feel great right now. I was feeling a little worse earlier, but yeah, just pray for me, y'all. I never had like allergy problems growing up. It's definitely something that has spawned as I've gotten older. I never had like sinus headaches and issues and or nausea. I like before I hit my 30s, I probably like threw up like twice in my life that I can recall, and it just happens more often now when I have some kind of sinus issue. So it just sucks. It just sucks. I hate it. So anyway, um let's go ahead and start I guess off with this discussion on CNN regarding the shooting that happened yesterday. So Scott Jennings is on Abby Phillips' show, and I'm not a fan of Abby at all. And I think Scott is really carrying CNN. More people probably see CNN when he goes viral to dunk on these people than anything else. But here we go.
What happens after? I mean, what should happen now to stop this from your perspective as a Republican?
Sure. Well, I think the first question you have to ask is why did it happen? I don't think it happened because of guns. I think it happened because somebody who was clearly suffering from severe mental illness
had access to weapons that would allow them to carry out a terrible shooting.
And the mental illness was encouraged.
But Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness?
I don't think we can tiptoe around this issue. And when you look at the messages that were written,
how many people outside of like gang violence commit mass shootings who don't have mental illness? Like you might have like I'm not saying there's not something wrong with people who would bother doing that. You know, like if you got some kind of beef with some kind of rival gang and you or somebody and you go to a school, not a school, just somewhere to kind of take care of them and a few people catch strays or whatever. You know, those things are included depending on different people have like different definitions, but I think it's like usually like 3 or more or whatever shot, and then you get kind of classified as a mass shooting. And that's just not people going to schools and killing kids or going to the malls and killing, you know, it can be stuff like that. And I outside of situations like those things, like if someone is like, I'm going to write a manifesto, I'm going to plan this out, I'm going to, you know, how many of these people are not straight up mentally ill? So I'm like, what about the people who don't have mental illness? You don't think the Uvalde kid had a mental illness? Carrying a bag of dead cats. You don't think he was mentally ill? And some of these other folks, like, come on. I think you got to be pretty mentally ill to do a lot of this stuff. So that seems like an odd question to me. But let's keep watching.
In some of the materials and on the weapons that we've seen, I mean, this person obviously was in a dark place.
Obviously.
And I want to know,
obviously.
I'm not sure the government is in that person's life enough to know, but his parents are.
But what
and his
about,
family is.
Scott, what about people who don't have mental illness? We have a huge gun violence issue here in the United States. We lead in gun violence.
But the issue today is quite obviously mental illness. And
if you take away the mental illness, it still leaves the guns.
The problem is that this issue can't be isolated in a vacuum of today. And I think to your point,
I agree.
Mental illness is a cop-out for today. which is also why I believe that,
How is it a cop-out? They are specifically talking about this issue because something specifically talking, they are reacting to it. They can talk about other situations, and they can, sadly, because there are other examples, but they are literally having a segment reacting to this person, their crime, the 2 children who were killed, the people who were injured. So saying, it's a cop out. We can't just look at this situation in isolation. Well, you are talking about the situation. That's literally why you are paid there today, to talk about this issue. So just to try to dodge it and avoid that this person was mentally disturbed. And again, how many of these people commit these things? Would you just say, you know what, they were just perfect mental health there? People, this isn't a new issue with people saying mental health. Republicans say it all the time when these things happen, not just when there's a trans shooter, but they really want to dodge that conversation because this dude identified as a woman. That's why they want to dodge it so bad, because they don't want to admit that this person is mentally ill. That's what's going on here.
I love how the GOP believes that that's God's only party, right? But you have people of faith on both sides.
I don't believe that. We're all God's children, McCarty.
There are people of faith on both sides who are giving their prayers, but who also believe that action is required. Because you asked the question, what happens after the prayers? Well, in this country, what happens after the prayers is that there's another shooting. And the problem is, it's the damn guns. Like there is a mental health problem in this country. I have a CWP. In fact, I took my CWP class with Governor Nikki Haley. We sat beside each other. We went shooting together.
And did you kill somebody? Did you murder somebody? Did you, or not you? Did your gun just jump up and start? Did your gun start killing people? Is your gun a problem, or is the person using the gun the problem? Did every gun owner kill somebody? Did you murder somebody? This is so stupid. It's the guns that's the problem. The guns are inanimate objects. Knives are inanimate objects. Cars are inanimate objects. Baseball bats, inanimate objects. So you have to use them to assault someone, to cause harm. They don't just kill people on their own. I only saw a little bit. I don't know how this clip's going to end. Let's find out together.
That is not foreign in South Carolina. I believe in that amendment and that right. However, the accessibility of weapons is something we have to deal with. Mental health resources is something we have to deal with. And the fact that people get killed in churches, whether or not it's June 2015 in Charleston, South Carolina, or whether or not it's kids in Minnesota who get killed. As a person of faith, it should shake your faith to the core that people are getting gunned down in churches.
Everyone.
Whoa. It should shake us to our core that people are being gunned down in church. Shake your faith how? Like you don't believe in God anymore? That as people are talking about mocking prayers, what do you mean it should shake you to your core? To what? Affirm that evil is real? We already know that. We already know that we live in a fallen world. How is his faith shaken? That's an interesting commentary right now. What do you mean? What do you mean? I know sometimes after tragedy, we got questions, and it's very heartbreaking. Very heartbreaking. People will struggle. Sometimes people don't handle tragedy well. If you're very affirmed in your faith and just kind of, I guess, in a good place spiritually, you can get that peace that passeth all understanding. But y'all want to mock prayer. What do you mean? Shake your faith. It was really hard losing my mom last year. And I didn't understand why. I guess I still don't understand why. On a grand scheme of things, I mean, I could list things like she took care of herself. She exercised, every day. She watched what she ate, but she didn't really do checkups. She didn't go to the doctor. She didn't even she had a life insurance policy on my dad. She just had a teeny tiny one on herself. And most of her mom lived to be 102. Her grandma lived to be 100. We thought we were gonna have another 30 years with my mom, at least. At least. So it was shocking, but my faith got me through. Prayers got me through. Worshiping God got me through. We're like, if y'all want to see us, we'll be at the church. Like, we rewrote a post, like, don't come to the house, go to the church. We will meet you at the church. And we sang, I trust in God, my Savior, the one who will never fail. And we cried and we prayed together. And even though I went through a major loss, the most painful thing I've ever been through, I just knew this God was still too good. And I just couldn't be mad at him, and was really grateful when I looked around at ways that, was kind of prepared without knowing. And I've talked about that, and I've written about that, so I won't go deep into it. But I'm baffled by that last line. I don't get too derailed by that last line, but I'm confused by that last line. But to say that people are using the scapegoat of mental illness, it's not just the guns. He said he owns guns, and he got the classes. A lot of people in his state, they have guns. In Minnesota, it's a hunting state. People hunt, use guns to hunt for, food or whatever for their families. So there's a lot of gun owners. If America had a gun problem, you would know it, because a lot of people would be dead. People say there's more guns than people. So it's not the guns. The guns just can't go off and kill people. Again, they're inanimate objects. It's the person behind the gun. Like, if you really feel it's the guns, why do you have one? Why did you get trained to have one? Why, so don't do this double speak sort of thing. When you're like, well, I'm a response. I understand, but it's the guns. It's the guns. If I felt something was that terrible and was going around, just was responsible for the evil and was committing the evil, I wouldn't actively be participating in it. If I felt that way. So people use this kind of rhetoric, and ultimately it leads to places where guns get confiscated. But if you're going to talk about, well, we need solutions, just shouting, do something isn't, it's performative, right? What are the actual real solutions? So this person acquired their guns legally. They acquired them legally. It wasn't they went all black market or something. They got them legally. Okay? So there's that. So the state does have red flag laws, but apparently there weren't any red flags that got checked. I can tell you there's some red flags that could have popped up if these were things that they cared to be red flags. This person was obviously mentally ill and mentally disturbed and mentally deranged. Not just, they wrote crazy stuff in his journals, but everybody doesn't look at this stuff. But he wanted his name changed, did get his name changed because he identified as a woman. That is a break with reality. That is disordered. It's odd that people would affirm that. He was a minor at the time, and his parents would go along with that and affirm that. That is unusual. That is weird. It's worth talking about, because if you want more background checks, what kind of background checks do you want? Because they check for things like domestic violence, etc. A lot of things that people are like, well, we need background. Okay, well, we have background checks. You order a gun online, it does not get shipped to your house. They still check you out, and you go pick it up at a gun store. You go to a gun show. Guess what? You fill out a form. Checks are done. So a lot of narratives that people have, I don't know what people think exactly what happens when you get guns, but this person got them legally. If you think that something else needs to pop up that will flag people and maybe prevent the wrong people, because even Abby Phillips, Scott was like, okay, this person had a mental illness, and like, okay, well, they have the access to the guns. Okay, well, do you agree that people who are mentally unwell shouldn't have access to guns? And they probably would agree with that. They just don't want to say that this person was mentally ill because he thought he was a woman. And that's why they want to just push past this whole thing and say the scapegoat. Is that it's mentioned all the time when these things happen. We got more on mental health, more on mental health. This is not a new conversation just because he's trans. It's not. So if y'all are willing to have something like that pop up, and that would be something that would be a red flag, and folks can check up more into it before they allow him to have the guns that they purchased, okay, that's a conversation we're having. But maybe not to these folks, again, because they don't want to admit that he's crazy. Because they're so into the ideology. Let me see if you guys remember when Ben Shapiro was on Dr. Drew. And let me see if I can find it real quick. And Zoe Tur threatened him. I'm looking for it on X real quick. I'm not seeing it pop up. Oh, here we go. Maybe this is the clip I'm looking for.
Genetics? Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
well, no.
What are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans.
You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
No, I know. Well, but wait. To be fair, you're actually being kind of rude.
You're
and that's not fair.
I'm sorry, it's not rude to say that someone who's biologically a male is a male.
You just
someone who's biologically male is a male.
But Mr. Shapiro, you knew very well that saying that to Zoe would be egregiously insulting.
Genetics.
Would you like to discuss the genetics?
Okay, before that part when he's like, "Would you like to discuss the genetics, sir?" If you haven't seen this clip, this is where "Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings" came from. And then it became like his saying. So he was on Dr. Drew's show, and they were talking about Bruce Jenner, who's, goes by Caitlyn, got the Courage Award. And so they were talking about whether or not it was he deserved it or whatever. So all these hosts were talking, and some folks were like, he just got in this space. It's not really fair or whatever, and etc. So some people had issues with it because, he's still like a new privileged white woman, I guess, taking all this kind of glory. And Ben Shapiro was just kind of sitting quietly, and he's like, "Excuse me, like, why are we mainstreaming delusion?" And then he started talking, going on a little rant about it. And then Zoe was just like, "You know what you're talking about it. You don't know the genetics." And he's like, "Would you like to discuss the genetics, sir? What are your genetics?" And then Zoe Tur, I don't know Zoe's real name, but he put his hands on Ben Shapiro and said, if you don't knock this off, you're going to go home in an ambulance. And then Ben Shapiro was like, that seems like an overreaction to political discussion. And and he's really cool about it. I don't know if he has like a danger monitor in his brain, Because if a big dude put his hands on, I mean, maybe he's just kind of not. He's seems like a smaller. Well, he is a smaller guy, but maybe not as small as you assume. But another bigger dude puts his hands on you, who's like obviously unwell and is like threatening your well-being, and you're just like, oh, that seems like an overreaction. And when he retells the story, he said in his head, he thought. In his mind, he was like, well, that really doesn't make sense because you don't go home in an ambulance, really. You go to the hospital in an ambulance. So why would I go home in an ambulance? So, very interesting story. But Zoe Tur's reaction to Ben was interesting. All of their conversations entertaining the Caitlyn Jenner thing was interesting. And Ben just comes out of nowhere. It's just like, why are we mainstreaming delusion? Like, this is obviously something we should not be celebrating, and etc. And then Zoe threatens him to enough to send him in an ambulance. Like, that's the threat, right? Not just a slap in the face, maybe a punch in the face. You're gonna be going home in an ambulance if you don't knock it off. And everyone else on the panel doesn't go, oh my gosh, that's an overreaction. Like, oh, calm down, Zoe. Like, find your peace. They all go, Ben, that was so rude. How could you say that? How could you be so mean to Zoe, who just threatened to beat the crap out of you? For words. For true words. They're like, well, you knew good and well that would set her off. He's a male. He's a male. I said sir because he's a male. He knew good. So this is where our society was. And how a lot of people still are. You know, the crazy person says something crazy, and the person who's speaking the truth is the one who's attacked. And you ask yourselves, how did we get here to the point where our country is elevating a lot of crazy people and going along with it? So Scott Jennings pointing out, like, this person had a mental health issue and everybody just trying to dodge it because they don't want to admit that obviously there's something mentally wrong with the person who committed the mass shooting. And again, if you're willing to do something like that, you can identify as, you know, you don't have to identify as, I guess you could just be a straight white male. Something's still wrong with you. And I think if we do enough digging, we're going to find that you were mentally disturbed. I think we're going to find that. But obviously, not everyone's guns go out and shoot people and kill people. So it's obviously the people behind guns. And if you don't think it's the people behind the guns, and you think it's actually the guns, then what are you going to do with everyone else who has the guns? This is why we believe that all these conversations are just trying to lead toward mass confiscation. Because mass shootings, if you look at the numbers, they're mostly committed with handguns. So if you're saying, well, we got to get rid of them, stop mass shootings, you're going to get rid of all people's firearms? I would say good luck, but I don't wish you any. In the United States of America? Come on. Come on. Come on. And do you guys remember this person, the lieutenant governor of Minnesota? Do you remember this person? This happened a while ago. And she is wearing a Protect Trans Kids t-shirt. And it's got knives and weapons on it. This is an elected official. Minnesota is a crazy place. Really crazy place.
Because let's be clear, this is life affirming and life saving healthcare. When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
That is not a grown-up's job, man.
That's what it means to be a good parent.
Nope.
Because
nope. It is your job to help your child grow up and deal with the world. It is not your job to affirm a delusion and set them up in a situation and Frankenstein their body. And then they get into all these positions or whatever in front of other people who will not affirm that. And then they got to deal with this crisis because they're in a freak body and people won't treat them like a woman just because they got fake tits. That you are not supposed to just affirm what your kid says, because your kids will lie and your kids are confused and your kids will listen to other people around them or TV or whatever, and they can get brainwashed and have some really, really crappy ideas. And hopefully as the parent, you can dissuade them. You can bring them back to the light and bring them back to the truth, but you do not just jump on it. That's the premise of Johnny the Walrus. You know, Matt Walsh's book about like a parent who has a child who's like playing around and saying that he's a walrus, and then all the she thinks is a joke at first, and all other parents are like, no, you have to affirm him. And so then she starts doing things to try to make him more walrus like, and they even talk about like doing surgery and chopping off his arms and legs or whatever to make him more like a walrus. Like it just really highlights the silliness of the transgender ideology. But we talked about this yesterday. They really need to gatekeep the gender dysphoria. And it's okay to admit that it's a mental illness, but when basically it's self-ID, you're going to get a bunch of weird people who are in your club. You're going to get men who commit sexual acts of violence that land them into prison, who then claim to be women so they can go into the women's prison and then be top dogs there instead of like fresh meat in the men's prison, because a lot of men don't appreciate folks who do violent crime to women, especially children. So that you can just say, well, I'm a woman, and get some kind of crazy judge and politicians who want to get you over in the women's prison. I don't think that should be allowed. But that's the left for you. That's Kamala Harris and all those folks for you. They're radical on this issue. It's not that I think people who have confusion about their bodies are more prone to violence, but I do think that people who are unwell are more prone to attach themselves onto that delusion. So, did you guys see the ABC reporter that mentioned that Trump's name was on the weapon, but they didn't mention that his name was on the weapon because they wanted to kill Donald Trump?
23-year-old Robin Westman was able to leave what police called a video manifesto that they're now going through to try and establish motive. We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns. There are also racial slurs, nihilistic statements, all painting the picture of a disturbed individual who carried out this mass shooting on the first week of school at the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis.
Apparently, I heard that he also used to attend that school. I'm not surprised to hear that, especially since his mom had worked there too. Keith Ellison Earlier this week, I played a clip of him saying we sued the Trump administration for gender affirming care. This is what they're obsessed with, and that was before the shooting. But Minnesota is really, really, really obsessed with this issue. And the Democrats in general are obsessed with this issue. We should reject all this stuff, guys. On CNN, Jake Tapper made sure to, I guess, get his pronouns right.
As I think people have been pointing out since this happened, you see obviously some real clues here as to what a motive could be, but they're not saying formally what it is yet.
The Minneapolis Star-Tribune, just as another piece of the puzzle as to who the shooter was, the Minneapolis Star-Tribune says, according to court records, because there's been some confusion about what the shooter's name was.
Yes.
That Robin Westman's mother applied to change her child's name in 2019. It was at one point Robert Paul Westman.
Correct.
But since she identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification, was underage, it's now Robin Westman. Brian Todd.
Yeah, he's a he. He's a he, always been a he. Again, maybe I should have a button, a Ben Shapiro button, just click it and be like, why are we mainstreaming delusion? Why are we mainstreaming delusion? That's the big question. Michael Steele also, we talked about the thoughts and prayers conversation yesterday because the mayor Jacob Frey had said, enough, like basically enough with the thoughts and prayers, and I'm paraphrasing. They were killed while they were praying, and I understand the sentiment is we need some more action, not just to pray. The prayer is not going to do it alone or whatever. Again, I believe prayer is very powerful. I'm not saying that you don't have to do action, but again, just yelling, do something very performatively, or instigating or implementing laws that aren't going to do anything but are just performative. That's not helpful to people who in the future who need to be protected, or the people who have been killed. So if we're going to implement some new legislation, then it needs to be good. And it really shouldn't infringe upon the liberties of law-abiding citizens. Anyway, Michael Steele also said something. I'm embarrassed that this guy was ever like the RNC president, man.
Appreciate this journey. I agree with the mayor. I'm not the thoughts and prayers. I'm so beyond that nonsense, the lie of that, because what we have are people who continue to stand in the way of actually doing something to stop the violence against their own kids. It is amazing to me. We watch young kids die in classrooms and now in church. And
they have the conversation with Ilhan Omar. I mean, I know she's from that state, but some people are saying, if it was Muslims who were shot and killed and stuff, would people just basically be disrespecting them? Like, well, they died in a mosque praying. And I don't think that they necessarily mean it to be degrading to prayer and faith, but it is, and it is offensive. And I'm sure by the time Michael Steele, he should have known better anyway, but by the time it was his show, people should have thought about it, known better anyway, but that's the route that they want to go. It's just really, really a shame. But when you disregard life, I don't think it's hard to kind of get to a point where you just have straight up moral decay. And I've played for you guys before this former KGB agent talking about ideological subversion, and it's psychological warfare on a country to basically break it. He said like the James Bond kind of spy stuff. That's not really how people operate doing like spy tactics. They do it with psychological warfare and, you know, changing the minds and altering the minds of the nation and breaking it that way. And he basically thought we were screwed back then in the interview. He was like, I don't know, maybe it was in the 80s, maybe earlier than that. I can't remember the exact time when he had a pretty lengthy interview on this stuff and the tactics of ideological subversion. But he talked about demoralizing a society so much to the point where people can't even accept the truth anymore. Like you can show them the truth and it can be right in front of their face and they will not accept it. And so when I think about ideological subversion and the demoralization of society and people not being able to accept reality, I absolutely think about this transgender issue and people seeing someone like Zoe Turr going, absolutely, that's a woman. How dare you say it's a man? And I'm just going to ignore the fact that Zoe Turr said that they're going to beat the crap out of Ben Shapiro. Like that, those sorts of things are what I think of. So I think just like communists and different radicals would use racial division in the United States of America to try to implement communism and push those sorts of ideology and tear down our nation. People are also trying to do it with the trans agenda. I think one obvious way that they were trying to do it is to put in their certain judges and come after like religious liberty and freedom and things like that. But Trump's election really put, you know, a halt to a lot of that kind of legislative, not legislative, I'm sorry, judiciary activism. You know, hopefully, I don't know if I haven't heard anything about Trump making moves to kind of replace, I guess Alito and Thomas, and I don't know if they'd want to at this time. I just don't want them to die like unexpectedly, and then some crazy Democrat is in charge at the time, and they replace them with the next Ketanji Brown Jackson. Ketanji is just a terrible mess. A terrible, terrible mess. But I wanted to talk about some conversations that I was seeing on some videos on TikTok about this issue. So someone had wrote under a video, specifically was a video about Jacob Frey saying, you know, enough with like the prayers and stuff. We got to do other stuff. They died at the church. And people were saying things like they're more worried about banning abortion than gun control. It's ridiculous. And so I responded. I was so annoyed that I couldn't do video responses to the comments. So I said abortion kills about 1 million children in the US every year. It's legal to do so. It's not legal to kill your children with a gun, but people obviously break the law. So how can we better protect our kids, stop these things in advance without infringing on the liberties of law-abiding citizens? And some people were just like, it's the guns, it's, you know, and tried to just say like, how can you compare, you know, these things with, you know, abortion doesn't kill children. And I'm like, well, according to Webster's Medical Dictionary, it does. Like, what do you mean? You can be like, it's a fetus. Do you think it's a good sign in society that you can be like, I don't know, try to wave off killing human beings because you've replaced the word fetus, children with fetus, even though you know it's like human and alive. like that word is supposed to make all the difference in the world to shield you from what we find to be like morally irreprehensible. Like, I don't think that's a good sign of society. But so one person replied to my comment and they said that abortion saves lives. And I always think it's interesting that people are like, oh, abortion saves lives. But they proceeded to then explain in ways that abortion doesn't save lives. if someone said abortion saves lives, in your mind, you're probably thinking in maybe instances where the mother's life is on the line. This person didn't even bring up such circumstances. They brought up, you know, that what about women who feel like they're not ready to raise children, and children who might live crappy lives, or women who might be raped, and just different circumstances where nothing that they mention is someone's life being on the line. And by the way, people, I'll grant that exception. I know people will be like, well, it's never really medically necessary for women to have an abortion to save her life. I'm like, okay, then go ahead and just grant the exception, because it's never going to happen anyway. In principle, like, shouldn't you be able to kind of, people will say it's okay to, like, not that it's okay, but I guess it's more morally you can allow if you need to induce a laborer to have the child come early, even knowing that they will not make it. That's obviously not the same thing. So it's not that people who don't want to grant medical exceptions believe that the mother has to risk her life or die. It's just that they don't believe that you should take the time to have the intention to purposely kill the child. Like, that's not the intent. They may die, but let's keep things not complicated. Let's just grant the exception. If a mother's life is at risk, yes, she should be able to save her own life. But she wasn't even arguing that. She was arguing, like, what if they have a bad life? And I'm like, did you notice how everything you said has nothing to do with actually preserving life? Because I've already mentioned that abortion takes 1 million lives a year in the United States of America. So every successful procedure ends in a death. And so people saying it saves lives. Even if you could present some kind of data and lives that were saved, you're never going to, like, tip those scales. And I'm not trying to mess with the law in situations where mothers can preserve their own life. I think those should be in the books, and they are in every single state. Okay. So that's not even, like, really a conversation worth having. But that's not why they bring it up. They're just playing games, and they mean it in a philosophical sort of sense. Like, it saves the life, as in the hopes and the dreams of the mother who would rather be doing other things than changing diapers, or it saves the life of that human being by killing them and stopping them from experiencing a life full of heartache because their mother would have treated them terribly. Therefore, it's better if they were never born. And so the problem with that is that they already exist, and abortion doesn't undo them. So you are killing people. So I asked the question. I'm like, okay, if you believe that it's worth, like, killing that a potential bad life is worth killing someone in the womb, then would you advocate that it's okay for a mother to kill her child outside of the womb because she suspects, or maybe they are experiencing a bad life? If you really think that's worth taking someone's life, like, why are you so gung-ho about doing that when that's like a potential thing that could happen? Because she could give them up to adoption in a very nice family. She could get her act together. I know women who were pregnant and they were in really, really bad situations, and their child, like, inspired them to get their life together, and now they have a beautiful life, married to a great man and other kids and stuff. Taking on responsibility to love and care and self-sacrifice for someone else makes you a better person, makes you a better adult, it teaches you how to be one. So you don't know if their life would be better. You're just assuming. But if the assumption is justification enough to kill someone, that they might have a bad life, then if you know a child has a bad life, why isn't it okay to kill that person? And they don't really have a good answer for that, because what they advocate for is unjustifiable, and they're just special pleading because the child's in the womb. And there was another person I was talking to, and they just, were like, they're not the same. A fetus doesn't have experiences and all this other kind of stuff. And granted, that's true. Like, I understand that we all have subjective sort of values anyway. But I believe, and I'm sure you guys probably agree, that we have inherent value. And, whether you just kind of take that as a statement of fact, or you root it in, we're all made in the image of God. Human beings, just by our very nature of what we are, we have inherent value. So it is wrong to kill us, because it's wrong to kill human beings. We're made in the image of God. And also, I take the position that life itself is inherently valuable. And I think that most people think that, including pro-choice people think that, because that's probably why they value experience and consciousness, because you are able to go through life being aware of it and experiencing the highs, the lows, the ups and the downs, and so on. It's worth being aware of in the world, good or bad, the ugly, the whatnot. So life is inherently valuable, and so is the human being. That's the position that I take. But a lot of pro-choicers will take the position that you have to at least have consciousness to be valuable. And we might have subjective value, like you value your mom, your dad, your dog. Well, not really. Well, some people, their dogs over other people, whatever. You may subjectively value them over other human beings, but that doesn't mean that, like, morally that they possessed more inherent value than someone else. You just would, like, if there was a fire, you're probably going to save your kid over mine, right? So there's subjective value, but as far as like inherent, like, we have inherent value, life is inherently valuable. But if you just take it that you have to at least achieve consciousness or something else like that, I don't understand, if that's your position, how you feel that it's wrong to kill people, to be honest. And that might sound a little crazy how I'm like jumping to that, but if all that matters is that you experience things, what matter? How are you harmed when you're no longer able to do that? Is my question. My issue, why I would say it's wrong to kill someone, is because you are depriving them of their life. The deprivation is the harm. It's not just how they experience their death. Like, people like, they can feel pain, and feeling pain isn't what that might add to why it's such a terrible death. But that's not what makes death wrong, or being aware that you're being killed. Like, if someone killed you quick and painlessly in your sleep, what makes it wrong? You can say, well, you have hopes and you dreams and memories and things you wanted to do in life, and you're a conscious being. Okay, but if someone killed you tonight, quick and painlessly, and you were unaware of it, you go to sleep with your hopes and dreams, and you don't wake up. What do your hopes and dreams personally matter to you? You don't care about them. You're dead. You are every bit as, conscious as a dead fetus. You both have no more future. And you don't mind. You're gone. So if it's not just like wrong to kill that human being because of what they are, and the fact that they're deprived of the life, if that's not the issue, then how are they wronged? And so I asked a person that question, and like, well, there's people around them who care about them and would mourn them. And granted, okay. I said, okay, so if there was a man who was killed painlessly in his sleep, quickly, he was unaware that he's being killed, and he had no family and he had no friends, and they were killed, what makes it wrong to kill that person? And how were they harmed? And the answer was a bit extraordinary. And the answer was, it truly depends on how the man ended up like that. That's the answer. I don't know. That they couldn't just plainly say, give me a reason to why it is wrong to kill a man if it's quick and painlessly, even though no one would mourn him. They need some more details about how they got to the point where nobody else cares if he lives or dies. So it's just a reality where there's no inherent value. It's all based on what you can offer someone else, what you mean to someone else. So if all that matters is how you mean to someone else, my value is like based off of someone else's subjectivity, you could easily decide that I'm not valuable. And I just think that leads to some really dark places. We've seen that historically. People will bring up comparisons to the slave trade. People bring up comparisons to the Holocaust, etc. But when you really believe that human beings just aren't valuable, you get to make all the rules. When you think you get to play God, I was a little, I've had a lot of conversations about abortion. I was a little taken aback by that response. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you can see it, but that was my response. that meme guy just looking like, that was a response. Someone said, I just saw a live channel, Parker Debates. He only wants to debate with Trump supporters. I walked into an abortion debate. His question, if there is a 50% chance of the child not surviving, do you abort? 50% is why would you abort? I mean, I think you should allow children to come to their natural death, to live out their natural life, their natural death. There's a really good article, and I did talk about it in my book, Of Course God is Blatantly Against Abortion. There was a man who realized that his child had trisomy, it might have been trisomy 18, but once they got that diagnosis, doctors didn't really treat them very well. It's kind of like, oh, well, would you like to have an abortion? And it wasn't like how you can what can you possibly do to preserve their life a little bit longer or whatever. It was basically like they were offered it, I think, a few times, and people found it to be offensive or whatever. But they came to the conclusion that they are that child's parent, and it is your responsibility to be a good parent for as long as you can be. And if all the time that they get to live is in their mother's womb, then be a good parent to that child as long as they live in that location. And maybe they make it out. You get to love them for a couple minutes. Maybe you get to love them for a few years. Maybe you get to love them for, as long as you live. But it is your responsibility to care for that child at that time. And people, responded even in that conversation on that video. I had quite a few, so I don't want to mix too many together. But the person who was like saying, trying to defend the killing the child before they come out of the womb to spare them of the bad life. Like, well, we're talking about trying to prevent the stuff before you have a kid. And I'm like, okay, but there is no before you have a kid. I mean, the before you have a kid is before anyone ends up in your uterus, before anyone, before the egg is fertilized, before those cells start dividing and all that stuff. Once they exist, they exist. So if you have an abortion, you've killed your son or daughter. That's a decision that you've made. But there is no, once they exist, there is no before. You're trying to spare them before. Your child exists. And if you can say it's okay to kill them in this circumstance, I'm just curious why you wouldn't carry that same logic outside of the womb. Because at the end of the day, it's really about their special pleading and they want to be able to have an abortion. That's what it is. It's not justifiable. You said he was throwing odd percentages, I guess, to throw off the caller. The caller said no, and Parker was shocked at the answer. You know, I don't Parker Dean. I'm not too fond of those folks for obvious reasons, I guess. But yeah, why would you kill your kid? Your kid is dying, so you're gonna kill your kid. Your kids are literally always dying. Like, I mean, people are growing, developing. I guess they're always dying isn't a good thing to say. It's always inevitable that they're going to die. Everyone is going to die. That is 100% conclusion. I guess you can leave a 0.0000 something in case God decides to send that chariot to you and you can just transition right to heaven. But everyone is going to die. That's just life. So yeah, I don't think you should kill your child. And then there's there's a possibility that they're not going to die. I've talked to many people in real life, not just online, because you can get a lot of different perspectives talking to people online when you talk about these topics all the time. People that I've just met in person who have told me horror stories about doctors being pretty darn sure that their children were going to have horrible abnormalities, deformities, and just terrible lives, wouldn't live long, and their children are healthy, happy, perfectly normal kids. Now, I don't want to say that doctors are always wrong. Sometimes parents are going to face heartbreak. We live in a fallen world. It's just a reality. And you got to be prepared for that. You got to be prepared for that. And this is all stuff that I also talked about my book too. But yeah, you don't get to kill your kid because they're going to die one day. I don't think you should be able to rob that child of their natural right to life. Just let it come to its natural conclusion, and then you mourn them. And I don't know, Parker and Dean, him and Dean are also people who can't really go beyond. They try to ground value in consciousness, and they literally can't explain why. Like, I've seen different lives with them, and they're just like, well, okay, explain why consciousness, matters. And they can't explain it more than that. They can't break it down more than that. And again, I guess I'll have to have more conversations and think about this a bit more and stuff, or I guess challenge some more people, pro-choice people, on it. But if you really believe that consciousness is what matters, I don't understand why you would just think it is inherently wrong to murder people and think that and how is it harming someone if you killed them, because they obviously will not care about, they won't, memories, hopes, dreams, all those things won't matter anymore. So if it's not the deprivation that is the harm, then where's the harm? So anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. That's all I got for you guys today. Please go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website, because it does cost a stream on my side, all that good stuff you guys can support. I very much appreciate you guys. I did see a comment earlier when I was talking about my allergies here about how apparently it's just going to keep getting worse when I hit my 40s and so on. And thank you for New Fear Unlocked. Well, I'm kind of joking about the New Fear Unlocked. I will just try to pray that off. But yeah, I hope it is just an allergies thing. I mean, the weather is kind of changing again. It seems like some summers, when you're going into September, we're just so still hot, and it's getting cooler and stuff. it's raining a lot. So it could just be a weather thing. And hopefully I don't have another like oncoming cold. That would really suck. Because I like hold on to them for a while. We also have like a youth revival this weekend, and I expect to sing. You know, my throat is already kind of like scratchy and stuff, but it's I don't know. I don't want to describe. It's kind of just gross how I feel, but I see some of y'all so late in the chat. We about to go. Well, since you're here, let me just throw this out here. I'm gonna make a I've mentioned it before that I was interested in doing like an online painting thing. My sister's an artist. She does painting classes, and so we pick like something to paint, and it would be maybe like a 2-hour session, and she'd look at everybody as they're like painting. We could do it live if you guys want to. We don't have to, I guess, but I'd probably like invite people into like my StreamYard, and we'd all get to see each other and interact for the time that we're doing the painting. So I think that would be cool. And if people are interested, I'm just going to send out like a interest form. I haven't made it yet, but I'll maybe do that today or tomorrow or tonight or tomorrow, and ask questions like would people prefer to just go buy their own products, or would they, want to, I guess, to pay in the package to have it just shipped so they have the right amount of paint, the right colors, the right brushes, the right canvas and stuff to get started. And we could, I don't know, kind of pick the kind of image it might be. So I'll send out an interest form. I know some of you guys watch her content and watch her paint live. So I'd love to do something a little neat with my sister. There will be like a fee. I obviously want to help her business. So if that's something you guys are interested in, you guys can just kind of let me know. Anyway, thank you for letting me know that YouTube doesn't recommend me. They obviously don't. They obviously don't. I saw a crazy stat about a video that I had on TikTok. It had 54,000 views, which maybe that sounds like a lot, but I have 130,000 followers on TikTok, so I should be like averaging a lot of videos like that anyway. But they like won't push my stuff to the For You page. So I looked at the numbers, and it was about the Meyer story, and like 96% or something of the views from that is from people searching for the story, and in my video popping up in the search. It wasn't really pushed to the For You page. I think 3% was on the For You page, and like only 2% of it was on the following page. So it's not being seen by people who follow me. So it's just really bizarre. It's really bizarre. But we'll keep pushing out the content, guys. Anyway, thank you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow.